The National Security Agency established the Cybersecurity Directorate in 2019. Its goal is to protect the Department of Defense, national security systems, and the defense industrial base from cyber attack. Rob Joyce oversees that directorate as the NSA's Director of Cybersecurity. Rob, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mamie. It's great to be here.
There's a lot of people doing cyber in the federal government and within DoD. What is your specific role in that arena?
So we have two big lanes. The first is we have NSA's Foreign Intelligence Mission, and that's really a superpower where we can look into adversary activity, the threats, the attacks, the tools they use, and understand that. And we do that not only for the NSA mission, but we help CISA, FBI, the greater Department of Defense understand those threats and those activities. The second big area is we're responsible for the keys, the codes, the crypto, and the protection of national security systems. Those are the things that carry classified information or warfighting material. And so that's a pretty big remit, but those are the most sensitive computers, networks, and capabilities the government has.
Your mission includes the phrase, quote, eradicating cyber threats. That's a strong word. I mean, isn't this really just a continuous cat and mouse game?
It is, but that was a deliberate choice that we chose that word. We want people to really aspire to giving the adversary a bad day each and every day. And if you choose something less than eradicate, you're settling, right? You're not going to contest, you're not going to push back, and you're not going to take bold action to try to address the growing trends and threats.
Well, I want to ask you about one of those threats, and specifically about protecting the defense industrial base. The director of the FBI and the head of the UK's MI5 delivered a joint address on the threat from the Chinese government. They said this, quote, they're set on stealing your technology, whatever it is that makes your industry tick, and using it to undercut your business and dominate your market. So what does that mean for companies that the U.S. military depends on?
It means they're under attack. They've been under continuous attack for years. And what we see are the Chinese intruding to try to take advantage of our competitive secrets, our intellectual property, our advantage. There's a saying we've been using for a number of years that China is much like a hurricane, right? Russia is much like a hurricane. They're aggressive and come at us hard and fast. But China is climate change, right? They're long-term, large-scale, and ever-present. And so we worry about that China threat.
So, I mean, this joint address is really unprecedented. Why did this come out now? I mean, hasn't the Chinese government always been trying to steal our stuff, going back to them stealing the F-35 plans and before that?
It represents our continued effort to address the nation-state threat that China represents. And it goes to, again, that climate change. We have to continuously be attentive to the threat and working on programs and a lot of collaboration. You'll see that between NSA and FBI. You'll see that between NSA and our international partners like GCHQ. And the FBI director working with one of our closest allies, the UK, is representative of the effort we're putting into it.
As far as trends goes, have you seen the Chinese government get more aggressive on that front?
We've not seen them be more aggressive, but they are continuous. And that is our concern, is we haven't been able to address the threat to the point we're satisfied it's gone away. And since they will evolve, we need to keep attention and evolving.
You know, a spokesman for the Chinese embassy in Washington said this, we will never encourage, support, or condone cyber attacks. I take it you don't buy that.
I think the evidence points the other way. There's significant intelligence. There's a lot of industry evidence. And you see, as we join with international partners, that there's an understanding across the globe of the tactics and techniques the Chinese are using. And it's really concerning. And it's outside the norms we've come to accept in international cyberspace.
regarding the threat from Russia, you called them a hurricane. Have you seen increased cyber activity since the start of the war on Ukraine?
Yeah. So at the start of the war, CISA worked with all of us in the community to talk about the need for Shields Up. Right? Jen Easterly and the community did a tremendous outreach to critical infrastructure, government, our Defense Department partners, to talk about the growing threat that the Russia-Ukraine conflict represented. Now, the good news is that the majority of that cyber activity stayed confined to the theater. So we saw pressure, significant attacks. A lot of the American public doesn't understand just how much cyber capability was brought at Ukraine. Two different things happened. One, we all worked to help defend against that. But two, the Ukrainians, after being under constant attack for years, have gotten good at recovery and resilience. And so when they had wiper viruses, when they had denial of service attacks, they went ahead and protected themselves. And so that made the difference. But there is a continuing and ongoing concern that at some point that spills over against our critical infrastructure, right?
But I wonder, why hasn't there been that major attack against the United States from Russia? They're definitely not happy about the sanctions. They have that capability. Is it because they're too busy?
I don't think it's too busy, but I think there really is an element of deterrence here, right? Deterrence in cyberspace is not you send cybers at me and we send worse cybers back at you. It really is all elements of government power. It is the capability of our State Department. It is our military. It is the allies and coalitions we have. And it's also deterrence by denial. That idea that we were attentive for these attacks. We took action with the private sector. The big cybersecurity companies did an enormous amount to look at Russian tradecraft and work with us to help expose that. So we took away in advance some of the capabilities to come at the U.S.
All right, we're going to take a quick pause here, and then we'll come back and continue. Coming up, more of my conversation with the Director of Cybersecurity for the National Security Agency, Rob Joyce. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm talking to the National Security Agency's Director of Cybersecurity, Rob Joyce. Rob, we're talking about Russia and China. Obviously, those are major state actors. What about non-state actors, the individual hackers? What are the trends that you're seeing there?
Well, the cyber criminals, ransomware, became a national security issue in the last year and a half. When you get things like Colonial Pipeline or the CISA intrusions, where our supply chain was impacted by not nation states, but the criminals, it really raised concern, and it started to get the focus of entities like NSA that used to work only the nation state threat. We have to address the national security threats, and cybercrime is now a national security issue.
How is prevention different for that, if at all?
Prevention really means you've got to do the basics. Most of the time when people are hit with ransomware, often there are vulnerabilities that are known, exploitable, found by the cyber criminals, and they crack the door open using that known vulnerability. It's really hard to do all of the basics. It takes time, resources, and attention, but that's what stops cyber criminals.
Tell us about the NSA's Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. What has it achieved so far, and what are your priorities?
So the Collaboration Center is a recognition that industry in cybersecurity has tremendous talent, reach, and capabilities. What they've wound up doing is they've established expertise and reach that the government doesn't have and shouldn't have. So by partnering that foreign intelligence capability we talk about at NSA with the entities who have hundreds of millions of endpoint visibility, that have the reach to clean the pipes as bits go by, we can do some pretty incredible things for cybersecurity. So what we've wound up doing is starting to engage with those companies where we have an ongoing dialogue between experts, their analysts and our analysts, talking about leads, and then going back and forth between what they see inside their networks, what's hitting them, and what they can stop and block. and taking that against what we can see in foreign space, and then working together to have impacts. So it's really been remarkable.
But the collaboration part requires information sharing, and the intel community is not known for liking to share information and be open. So how do you do that, and how do you remain effective?
Yeah, so it's new for us. We're learning. We've been at it about 18 months, but we've come a long way already. We have new processes and a team established who's looking at classified intelligence and trying to find the nuggets that really ought to be extracted, sanitized, and then brought down. The sensitive parts is that we're finding, Mimi, is not what we know, but how we know it. So when we disassociate how we got the information from the actual threat, we're able to share it. And what we're also learning is by finding out what the companies need to know and talking to them about the data we're sharing directly, they're giving us feedback that lets us tune that intelligence to produce more effective and more powerful information sharing.
So what authorities do you actually have within DoD and the IC, and then when dealing with companies in the defense industrial base? What can you actually make them do?
Yeah. So I, as NSA, can't make them do anything, right, as far as the DoD companies in their cybersecurity practices. And that actually is a good thing, because they don't look at us as a regulator or a law enforcement entity or somebody that can bring liability to them if they share something sensitive. They understand we know how to keep secrets. And so that also fosters a level of trust. Where I can be very directive is in the keys and codes and cryptography space. We set the national standards for the things that encrypt to protect data, and that's the government's last line of defense for that sensitive information. So it really is a sweet spot that we can create a partnership where they don't feel threatened, but I can give them advice based on our expertise. There's a great saying, it takes a thief to catch a thief. And because we are out there in foreign intelligence space exploiting networks, we understand where the practical vulnerabilities are. So we come with a sense of knowledge and experience talking to these companies about what really makes for effective defense and what is probably lower priority to implement.
I want to ask you about working with our international allies and partners. And beyond telling me, yeah, we're collaborating, we work great together, can you offer me specifics as to what you're doing together and what you're looking for from them?
Sure. So, certainly the easiest part is the Five Eyes Alliance, where we have SIGINT agencies that are our peers, right? And in the UK, in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, where they have their own intelligence capability, but we share and collaborate. What we can then do is take a threat that we're working on, talk to them about what we've understood, let them see aspects of it that we may not see, and then we go and collaborate on a joint advisory, or when we go out to do joint attribution. And it is so powerful. When you look at the attributions, for instance, the things about Russia, Ukraine, where we went out with the EU, or we bring NATO nations together, we bring partners and allies well beyond the Five Eyes Alliance, even beyond Europe. And that sends a powerful message that the international community is coming together against these irresponsible acts. It's really, really been a good collaboration.
I want to ask you about quantum computing, because that's going to affect every industry. How will it impact cybersecurity?
Yeah. So quantum computers represent a threat to some of the traditional encryption we have today. So they will impact the confidentiality of the messages we transmit, but more importantly, they also are threatening the access and identity controls on the computers. The things you use to authenticate yourself into a network can be broken by a quantum computer. Quantum computers don't exist yet. But it's just a matter of time before we solve the engineering problems to get to quantum computers. And so we want to be defending against that threat in advance. And so you saw NIST just recently come out with the first set of algorithms that have been publicly reviewed in a competition to select how we're going to protect against the quantum threat and get those endorsed for use. And so we're on the road to getting those adopted into commercial standards, into government standards, and protecting against that threat.
Well, Rob, there's a lot more to talk about, but I want to thank you so much for coming in and being on the program.
It's been great. Thanks, Mimi.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.